Hello guys, it's been a while since I dropped one of these here. Today I want us to look at English paper 1, the comprehension. When we are looking at the comprehension text, we are trying to understand how the writer of that text has used language to create meaning. When you answer comprehension questions, you are taking the position of an investigator. You are investigating how has this author used language and language devices to influence the reader into buying into the agenda that they are trying to push. It will be super beneficial for you to download the inset and go through it. The first question we have is the writer's view in this paragraph subjective or objective? Motivate your answer with reference to the paragraph. What is the writer's view? Do not write your answers as if the marker knows what is the writer's view. Let us know what is the writer's view. So you must go to paragraph 1, extract the writer's view from paragraph 1. Then tell us, is that view subjective or objective? What makes a view subjective? And what makes a view objective? Well, it's objective if it's factual. It's supported by research and statistical data. When we look at paragraph 1, we can clearly see that the writer here rejects scientific expertise. And not only that, they say that you can simply observe what is around you and notice the changes. This is the evidence that you must bring forward. You must code evidence into your answers. An answer that deserves the full 3 marks will have 1, the writer's view, 2, a clear stance on whether it's subjective or not, 3, evidence to support that stance. Let's move on to the next one. The next question we have, explain how the diction in this paragraph depicts the swallow. You must go to the paragraph, look out for words and phrases that tell us something about the swallow. The writer makes use of specific words to influence us, the readers, to perceive the swallows the way that the writer wants us to perceive them. We must go to paragraph 2, look out for specific words. Masters. What is a master? A master is someone who is highly knowledgeable in a subject. The writer calls the swallows masters of the skies, implying that they are highly knowledgeable about navigating the sky. They have great expertise in navigating the aerial space. And if we continue, we have these masters of the skies are Goliath navigators. This is a biblical reference. Goliath versus David, or David versus Goliath. When you think about Goliath, what comes to mind? His physicality. Goliath is strong and giant-like. We can infer some kind of dominance, right? Calling them Goliath navigators, the writer is depicting them as giants of the sky, that they have great dominance of the skies. The question restricted us to using diction only to try to explain how the writer wants us, the readers, to perceive the swallows. We can see that the writer wants us to perceive them as smart, highly knowledgeable, dominating, resilient, right? Okay, let us continue. Now, identify and explain the idiom in paragraph 3. This question is a straightforward question. You must extract the idiom. Tell us what the idiom is. Let us move on to the next one. Explain how the author justifies his frustration with the scientific community in this paragraph. Make reference to 2 techniques in your response. First, we must understand what the examiner is asking. Before you explain that, tell the marker what are those frustrations. Then, you must tell us how the author justifies his frustrations, but you are restricted here. You cannot just extract anything from the paragraph to justify the author's frustrations. The examiner wants you to use 2 language techniques. You must extract a language device. So if the author has used a rhetorical question, you must extract the rhetorical question, and then expand on that. If the author has used juxtaposition, you must extract that, explain it, and tell us how it justifies his frustrations. Let's go to paragraph 5 and see what are the author's frustrations and what are the language techniques that have been used to justify that frustration. Paragraph 5 opens up with a rhetorical question. Then you must tell the marker how this rhetorical question has been used to justify the author's frustrations with the scientific community. If you read paragraph 5, you will note that the author is frustrated with the disappearance of insects and how that is overlooked by a lot of scientists. You must tell the marker how the rhetorical question supports the frustration. The rhetorical question is asking, when was the last time you saw an insect on your windscreen? It's prompting you to think that, oh man, it is true. Insects are disappearing because when last did I see one? And the author continues to use emotive language, deeply concerning. It's not just concerning, it's deeply concerning. So in your final answer, let the marker know that the writer is frustrated that insects are disappearing from the environment and scientists do not care. Number 2, let us know the language device. The rhetorical question prompts the reader to think about the changes in the environment. Then we have the use of emotive language, deeply concerning. When you call something deeply concerning, you want it to be treated with a sense of urgency. So the writer uses emotive language to highlight how urgent this thing is, that it needs immediate attention. The next question, we are required to look at the phrase, an insect apocalypse, semicolon, particularly in developed nations. The question is asking us to provide a grammatical explanation as to why a dash would be more appropriate than the semicolon used. We must recall the function of a semicolon and the function of a dash to be able to answer this question. We know that a semicolon is used to join two independent clauses that are related. Then we must inspect our phrase and ask, are these two independent clauses that are closely related? And you can see that no, because this is not an independent clause. It cannot stand on its own. We've solved why a semicolon is not appropriate. Then we need to solve why a dash would be more fitting. And if you remember, one of the functions of a dash is to show an afterthought. We can use a dash to provide additional information. We can see that a dash is a better fit because the second phrase provides additional information on the insect apocalypse. It's telling us that there's an insect apocalypse and the insect apocalypse is concentrated in developed nations. Question 1.8 we have, refer to paragraph 4, paragraph 10, and the image below. And then we have the image here. Compare the phrases the windshield phenomenon and the insect apocalypse and argue which one is more effective to describe the decline in insect numbers. This is a 4-mark question. The text is our point of reference. So we need to go to paragraph 4 and see what is in paragraph 4 and paragraph 10 relating to these two phrases. Looking at paragraph 4, the windshield phenomenon is the disappearance of insects, observable insects. That is the definition of the phrase. If you look here, the author is arguing that 1 or 2 might be observed, but their numbers are in sharp decline. And when we go to paragraph 10, the insect apocalypse is the elimination of insects by means of pesticides, right? So the author argues that we must learn to live alongside these insects rather than eliminating them by means of pesticides. That is what the insect apocalypse means. When you answer questions relating to the comprehension text, everything you need is in the text. Definitions, explanations, examples, all of that is in the text. Please do not deviate from the text. Now that we have gathered understanding of what the insect apocalypse means and what the windshield phenomenon means, let us go back to the question. The question requires us to compare, meaning that you must contrast these two phrases, right? Then you're further required to argue which one is more effective to describe the decline in insect numbers. You need to take a stance where you explicitly state which one of these two is effective in describing the decline in insect numbers. There is no right or wrong answer in terms of which one of these two is effective. Don't make the mistake of arguing from personal preference. The question is not asking which one do you like. The question is asking you, using language and how we use language to create meaning, which one is effective in its use of language to convince the reader that the decline in insect numbers is really that bad. Tell us which one of these two pulls out strong emotions from the reader. If you argue that the insect apocalypse is more effective, bring out how the word apocalypse draws strong emotions from the reader. Apocalypse is an end of times. And when you call this the insect apocalypse, you're suggesting that this is something that needs immediate attention. You are highlighting the sense of urgency that in attending to the decline in insect numbers. You are highlighting how the elimination of insects is destructive. You could argue otherwise and say that apocalypse is too exaggerated, that exaggerating the decline in insect numbers robs it of the importance that it needs to be treated with. And the exaggeration undermines the problem. Remember that we are comparing in our answer. So don't focus on one and leave out the other. If you choose that the insect apocalypse is more effective, you must bring why the other one is not. Now, let us look at the wind-chill phenomenon. So in paragraph 4, the wind-chill phenomenon is the observable decline in insect numbers. If you argue that the wind-chill phenomenon is effective, you could argue that it ties into everyday life, more relatable because it's drawing attention to something that is in everyday life. Or you could argue that it's not effective because it lacks emotion, that it's referring to something that you can observe and that it doesn't pull out emotions from the reader the same way that the other one does. The format of your answer: 1. Go to paragraph 4, make reference to paragraph 4 and make reference to paragraph 10 and let the marker know what these two phrases mean. Extract from the image as well and use the contents in the image to tie into your definition. If you look at this image here, you can see that you have insects that are piling up at one point. Use that to add to the two phrases. Decide on which one is more emotive to the reader and undermine the other one. Whatever you decide, make sure that you follow the format that I've just outlined. Okay, let us move to the next one. For questions that are highly graded, 4 marks, 3 marks even, please provide evidence by means of quoting from the text. Your answer must have quotes from the text, words, phrases quoted from the text to support what you're saying. Think about point, explain, evidence, link, format, right? The next question we have: critically discuss how the writer's use of the silence of the bugs in paragraph 4 is an effective means of conveying the intention of the passage. Refer to text 1 as well. There are a couple of things you need to do here before you outline your answer. The question requires us to unpack why the writer decided to use the silence of the bugs, right, in conveying the intention of the text. So we need to go and look for the intention. What is the intention of the passage? Then we are required to also make reference to the text above. These kind of questions require you to extract definitions, ideas implied, and apply them to the comprehension. In paragraph 4, we can see that the silence of the bugs is linked to the disappearance of observable insects. So now that we have the context of what the silence of the bugs is from paragraph 4, we need to consult the text provided before we answer. The phrase "the silence of the lamb," right? The title refers to the protagonist who is seeking to silence the haunting screams of the lambs that she failed to save in her childhood. And we have quest for redemption there. You can clearly see that there are undertones of accountability, undertones of feeling guilty for not participating in saving the insects, undertones of seeking redemption, undertones of regret if nothing is done because she failed to save the lambs. All right, the question requires us to discuss how the writer's choice to use the silence of the bug helps him anchor his message to the reader. We can already see that the connection between these two is one, we can see that the author wants to draw the same emotions, that guilt. What is the intention of the passage? The author of the comprehension text wants you, the reader, to feel accountable for the loss of insects. The author wants you to be conscious of your participation in the decline of insects numbers. Next, we need to tie in the context of text 1 and how the context is embedded in the silence of the bugs. We've already established that the emotions drawn out from text 1 is that of guilt. The use of words like haunting, seeking to silence, quest for redemption, they all have to do with accountability and guilt. And that is what the author wanted to embed in the title, The Silence of the Bugs. So in your answer, extract from text 1 that there's a sense of guilt, sense of accountability, sense of remorse embedded in the silence of the lambs. Then you need to draw a parallel from the silence of the lambs and the silence of the bugs to tell the marker how the author extracted the emotions from the silence of the lambs. And the author made that choice to evoke feelings of guilt and accountability from the reader. This is the last question. I'm planning to make more of these. Please subscribe so that you don't miss out.